50,000 people used to live here. Now it's a ghost town.
If I were to ask the average Fortnite player, when was Tilted Towers destroyed, I think most could give a pretty accurate answer. Anyone would say around the end of Season 8, just at the time of the volcano erupting, which is technically true. But I would actually go a step further and not only argue that Tilted itself was physically destroyed, but most people wouldn't go so far as to say that Tilted never came back. Because Tilted was technically brought back under the guise of Neo Tilted. But I would argue that the travesty that Neo Tilted is about the only thing it shares in common with its great predecessor. Neo Tilted sucks. It is a boring, gross shell of the iconic drop point that Tilted used to truly be. And so today, ladies and gentlemen, I want to break down what happened to Tilted, why it is so bad now, with nine total points. And you might at least disagree with me saying that Neo Tilted sucks, but come on. I think everybody watching this video can agree that they at least miss Tilted Towers a little bit. Anyways though, guys, we've got a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. The first thing that we need to establish before we get into this video is that Tilted Towers used to be the #1 drop point on the map. At least the western side of the map. A few months ago, I did a survey reaching out to you guys asking what your favorite drop location was, and Tilted Towers actually tied for the #1 spot with Retail and Salty, which are both eastern drop points, so we have to at least assume that Tilted was the #1 drop point on the western hemisphere of the map. So with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to step into the realm of why Neo Tilted ruined Tilted Towers. All right, so the first point that I need to hit home on, and really something that is going to, I think, apply to every other single point that I make on this list, is that, first of all, Neo Tilted removed the #1 place in the map. I know that's a very obvious thing to say, but let me explain. So I have never made a video hating on one single location. A location could be as bad as Haunted Hills or Sunny Steps. And it's not worth it to me to make a video bashing it. But the reason that I can make this video is because Neo Tilted removed Tilted Towers. And the reason that this is such an important point to understand is that it applies to every single other point we're about to make. By removing the #1 Western POI on the map, it subsequently thrust more pressure on it than the average new location sees. It's not just the idea of, oh, this is a new location, I don't like it, but it had such big shoes to fill going in. And because this absolute catastrophe of a location removed one of the best locations in Fortnite, this only amplifies the issues with it. All right, point number 2. It is single-handedly the most difficult location to learn in Fortnite. So on day 1, I think myself, like most of you guys, dropped in and were super hyped up for a new Tilted Towers. It brought in a lot of interest. The hype was there if it had been good. But the amount of space in Neo Tilted is just so vast that it was hard to learn. Every building felt bland, redundant, and unnoteworthy. Every single building on every floor felt the same, and this could almost be applied to each building feeling the same as the others. Nothing felt unique or noteworthy, and this made learning the location very unrewarding. It just felt boring. And not only that, but because it felt unrewarding, I didn't feel like going there. I didn't feel like learning it, which kind of further decreased my want to go there. Why would a player want to drop at a place that they don't know how to perfectly loot when they could just go to somewhere they've been dropping for months? So I think just being a huge location that wasn't fun to learn was the first of 8 nails to go in this coffin. All right, so moving on to point number 3 now, I want to talk about fighting. One of the greatest things about Tilted Towers was it was an excellent location for fights. But this is such a big thing to talk about, I actually need to break it up into 4 separate points. So we're gonna do 3A, B, C, and D. The first point we need to talk about is indoor fighting in Neo Tilted. One of my favorite things about the original Tilted was that it lent itself to rewarding smart players. Do you guys remember the iconic building that was kind of like a 4-way set of stairs that just went all the way up to the top? It was the brick building with the drywall, and a ton of people dropped here. I remember watching controller players like Nick Merckx and Aiden just dominate in this building because it rewarded smart playing. You didn't have to be an expert builder to win in here if you were just a good player. And in my opinion, the new locations just don't have that. The new buildings don't feel like you can be a smart player in them. They just feel very boring. Building in them is near impossible, and you can hardly hear if someone is above you or below you. They simply just don't lend themselves to intelligent fighting without builds. Alternatively, and this is going to take us to point 3B, outside fighting also sucks. Do you guys remember back in the day rolling up onto tilted towers after like a few circles and just seeing the monstrosity of builds that would be all interconnected to the buildings? Because it was a great place to build fight. Not only could you work yourself through the buildings, but it just lent itself to a lot of build fights. It was open enough. The buildings weren't so insane that it was totally closed off. But now it feels like there's hardly enough space to even bother to build fight. Very rarely do I ever roll through Tilted now and see a structure that is higher than one of the actual buildings. Which takes me to my next point on building. And this is also related to just the location being so closed off. Tilted used to be a place that you need to be very on guard. Because Tilted is so big, it's impossible really to get spotted or spot another squad strategically. What I mean by that is like usually when you run into someone else at Neo, in the streets anyways, it's just random. It used to be very common that you would get sniped from that northeastern ridge that just kind of went around the location, and it's missing that. Encounters now feel very random and don't lend themselves to skill. Unless, and this is going to take me to my final point, you're in a slipstream. The only way to really get a tactical advantage on someone in Neo Tilted is to be the person in the slipstream, dive in, take high ground, and have a tactical advantage over them, which strongly discourages staying in Neo Tilted. So I know that was a lot to take in, but the main points of this is just that fighting in Neo Tilted is nothing like it used to be in the original Tilted Towers. It's dangerous to stay, it's hard to find other players, and it really just doesn't lend itself to smart fighting. Moving on to our number 4 point, wood. Rumor has it there is one person to walk out of Neo Tilted with more than 100 wood. All right, a bit of an exaggeration, but I think we can all relate to this. Because Neo Tilted is futuristic themed, everything in every single building is metal. Now, metal is great. I like metal. Late game, metal is amazing. But let's just say you've done your looting at Tilted and you're ready to leave, and you know, maybe you're not the craziest looter. It's not unrealistic to think that you only have like 300 metal. Whereas someone else at another location, if they're good, can easily farm up 600, 700, maybe 999 wood if they drop Dusty. It is very hard to walk out of Tilted, roll up on another player, and be able to match them in materials. Yes, you might have superior materials, but when they have 500 wood and you only have 200 metal, you're not going to do well. And obviously anyone is going to take metal over wood if it's a 1-to-1 trade, but when it's like a 2-to-1 where the other player is going to have a ton of wood and you're going to be easily outmatched, no one wants to take that. Moving on to our 5th point, which I don't want to dwell on too much, but I think it is important to bring up, is that Neo Tilted feels very tryhardy. I try not to be someone who complains about sweats, but it feels like nowadays the only people that drop Neo are the people that think Neo is good. And what I mean by that is like they think it's the hardcore place to drop. So people really try when you go there. And great players have always dropped Tilted, but it used to feel like everyone wanted to try their hand at Tilted, even some of the bad players. But now it doesn't feel like the high drop location, but rather just the good player location, which I don't know about you guys, but it's not fun to me. And moving on to number 6. Neo Tilted was the first location in Fortnite to not use an alliteration. Okay, sorry, that's not a genuine point, but I don't know, did that bug anyone else? Number 7. Nostalgia. So, in all honesty, part of this video is trying to throw a little bit of Tilted nostalgia at you guys. I think we can all agree that Tilted was a legendary location. And I think Neo Tilted would have really done well if it had have played into our nostalgia. The biggest problem I found with Neo Tilted is that they didn't keep anything from the original. It would have made sense to me if they had have just redone all the textures of the location and left the buildings as they are, or at the very least, keep them similar. But because they completely wiped it, they just lost all of that nostalgia and love that had built up around the location. If you think about the more successful changes that have happened to POIs, it's usually not a complete flip, but rather a morph. So for example, Dusty Depot kept part of the depot when it became Dusty Divot. It expanded, it didn't just completely change. Loot Lake stayed one of the more open locations in the map, but it expanded and became better. New Tilted stayed a insane jungle of buildings, but it didn't keep the vibe. It didn't keep the feel, and it didn't keep its relatability. Like, the T building still exists, but it's completely different from what it used to be. It's not the same floors, it's not the same level of heights, and there's just no love that I feel for it. There's none of that nostalgia, which I truly think is a huge thing missing from Neo Tilted. Again, the only thing that's similar to Neo is that it's towers and it has the name Tilted. Which takes me to my number 8 spot. The storyline was bad. Okay, I'm really gonna hit home on the nostalgia right now, and I'm not trying to, but we need to remember back to season 3. You guys remember like all that hype about that location that was gonna get, you know, like wrecked by a meteor? Yeah, right, that was Tilted Towers. In season 3, everyone was so pumped for Tilted Towers to get destroyed. It was something that so many people were expecting and visualized in their minds, it almost became a bit of a meme after it didn't happen. Then season 4 rolls around and the rocket almost destroys Tilted, and then season 5 rolls around and everyone's speculating, oh, the cube's gonna destroy Tilted. Season 6, people really start thinking the cube's gonna destroy Tilted. Season 7, I mean, to me, it was still a possibility. And what I'm getting at is by the time it finally happened in season 8, it was something that was so often thought about, so often visualized, that it wasn't surprising. To me, it didn't have the payoff where I was shocked because it was something I had imagined 5 seasons in a row. It was something that we had expected and expected and expected, and we never got it. So when it finally did happen, it didn't matter. Tilted may have not been destroyed, but it was something in our head that we knew could happen. And I feel like they waited so long to finally destroy it that it just wasn't really noteworthy. The only reason it was exciting was because it reminded us of an old idea that never came. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is going to take me to my 9th and final point. So the first point we made was just simply that because Neo Tilted replaced Tilted, it had a lot of pressure put on it. And that kind of amplified all the flaws with it. Those 6 flaws that I pointed out. This last point is almost like a conclusion. It's like because of every single other point, 1 through 8, minus the alliteration joke, it all leads to this final 9th point. And that is this. The number one reason that Tilted was such a loved location was because it was a hot drop. People dropped there because they were expecting chaos. People dropped there because people dropped there. It's like the law of attraction or something. I don't know. But because you knew Tilted is the place you go if you want to get in a huge fight, that attracted people. And that is no longer. Neo Tilted is not the number 1 drop spot in the game anymore. Salty Springs has easily taken the number 1 spot. It is just pure and utter chaos to drop there now. Kind of like it used to be at Tilted. Pleasant Park also seems to have gained a ton of popularity on that western side. And it seems like even Retail Row, which is now Mega Mall, has retained most of its drops. But where it used to feel like 20 to 40 people would drop Tilted a game, now I think that number is half or less.
There's like 1 million people here.
And because nobody drops there, nobody drops there. It's this weird cyclical thing that the thing that made Tilted was because it was chaos. And now the most important thing that made it what it was is gone. Gone because of every other reason I just listed off. It's a bland location with very bad fighting. Getting materials, one of the most important things in Fortnite, is extremely challenging. And on top of that, it just didn't play into our nostalgia of the old Tilted or have really a good storyline at all. Which really just makes for a map that's not loved and gets less people dropping there. And when you're a location known for having people drop there, that's not very good. Tilted was never my favorite location, but I can't sit here and act like it's not a place that I miss. Salty has kind of replaced Tilted in a way where it's now like the boys, buckle up, we're dropping wild. But even Salty, it's not the same as Tilted. It doesn't have as much loot, and it just purely doesn't have the chaos that old Tilted did. So yeah, that's it. It's sad, but I think it's the truth. anyways, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys did enjoy this and you like the content, please subscribe to the channel. I put a lot of time into this video, so if you could leave a like, that would be very appreciated. But it was a really fun video to make, to just kind of speak what I believe to be true and just let it out there and just let that rant go on Tilted Towers. F's in the chat for Tilted Towers, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great day, and I'll see you later. Peace. It only amplified